Welcome back for episode 5 of Disturbing Reddit Posts. The title is pretty self-explanatory, so I don't think this needs much of an intro. I saved the worst post till last, and it's honestly one of the most horrifying stories I've ever seen on Reddit, so make sure you stick around till the end to see that. Anyway, let's investigate. If you enjoy internet mysteries and generally disturbing content, feel free to subscribe and turn on notifications for more content like this. If you're interested in supporting the channel, you can become a Ko-fi member or a channel member to gain access to uncut videos and other perks, or you can leave me a tip by clicking the thanks under this video. Thanks to anyone who considers this. This video will contain discussions of topics that some might find triggering. Viewer discretion is advised. You can become a Ko-fi member or a channel member to watch an uncut version of this video, which features a whole extra entry that was unsuitable for this cut. There is never a dull moment on the Confessions subreddit. It's home to some of Reddit's most chilling stories, and thankfully also a few petty and light-hearted ones to lighten the mood. Of course, this is disturbing Reddit posts though, so don't expect your mood to be lightened at all throughout this video. One post from this subreddit 9 months ago was titled, "I put peanut butter in my friend's drink thinking she was lying about her allergy." It read, "I was young, only in the 2nd grade, and had recently been taught about lying. After our lessons on sinning and doing bad stuff, I developed the idea that my friend, let's call her Lily, was lying about her peanut allergy and just didn't like peanut butter, but was too ashamed to tell me because they were my favourite snack at the time. Not to mention the times when someone would bring in a snack for the class and we'd always have to check if they had peanuts in them. If they did, the whole class couldn't eat them so that she wouldn't feel left out. I was tired of what I thought was a dumb, made-up lie and decided to take matters into my own hands by bringing a big jar of peanut butter and waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Once it's snack break, I waited until Lily went to the bathroom to take out my peanut butter jar to slip a spoonful into her cup, shaking it good so she wouldn't suspect a thing. Once she came back, she sat down and drank some of her peanut butter-infused water. As she did so, I watched with wide eyes, making sure to take in every detail, now convinced that she's been lying the whole time. Suddenly, Lily started coughing uncontrollably, choking and thrashing herself all over the floor. It also didn't help that she forgot her EpiPen at home that day, causing her to convulse and forcing my teacher to call an ambulance. It turned out she was severely allergic to peanut butter, and I never had the gall to tell her what I had done that day. We're still friends today, and she strongly believes that her father was trying to kill her that day since she got in a fight with him the day before regarding her dead mother. This story reminds me of the coconut oil story, where Opie's mother-in-law used coconut oil on Opie's daughter because she didn't believe she was actually allergic to coconuts, and it ended up killing her. I actually covered that in a previous video if you want to hear the full story. Thankfully, this peanut butter story didn't end in death, but it must have been terrifying for Lily at the time. OP made a really stupid decision. I honestly can't understand what possessed her, and I'm not saying it's okay, but she was in 2nd grade. Young kids do stupid things and don't think of the consequences. I'm sure we all made a bad decision around that age that as adults we wouldn't even dream of. Those were my thoughts when reading most of this, and if I were Lily, I could forgive OP for what they did. Even if it could have killed me, that clearly wasn't their intention. Since everything turned out okay, I'd probably even laugh about it now, but that's just me. That last sentence changes everything though. We're still friends to this day, and she strongly believes her father was trying to kill her that day since she got into a fight with him the day before regarding her dead mother. How could you possibly allow your friend to think that their dad tried to kill them when it was actually just a dumb and impulsive mistake you made when you were in 2nd grade? The fact that Lily's mum was dead too, so her dad is her only remaining parent, makes that so much worse. I have to assume that her relationship with her dad wasn't the best if she even considered that he tried to murder her in the first place, but that being a possibility at the back of her mind could be the difference in her having an okay relationship with him and her disowning him. Even if OP didn't want to admit that they did it, they could have thought of a way of telling her it wasn't her dad. Maybe saying they heard it was another kid at school but didn't know who. There would be a way around it. Instead, they allowed Lily to believe her only remaining parent is an attempted murderer and never had the decency to tell her otherwise. A few of the comments pointed out that this sounded fake because how would someone not notice that peanut butter, which isn't water soluble, had been put in their drink? OP says she put it in Lily's cup, which to me implies it wasn't a clear water bottle, so she likely wouldn't have seen it floating around in there, and because it isn't soluble in water, it might not have even flavoured the water enough for her to taste it before it was too late. Others said kids wouldn't have been allowed to bring in peanut butter in case someone was allergic, and that the school nurse would have had an EpiPen so they wouldn't have needed to call an ambulance. I think that totally depends on the school. When I was in primary school, there were no peanut butter bans. Our bags weren't routinely searched anyway, and some kids brought a packed lunch, so it wouldn't be that unusual to see a kid with a jar of peanut butter. We also didn't have a school nurse. I'm guessing some of the teachers were trained in first aid, but if there were any major medical emergencies like this, all they could have done was call an ambulance. So while I really hope this is a fake story, at least in my personal experience at the school I went to, it's certainly plausible. There was a recent Ask Reddit thread titled, "Outdoorsman of Reddit, what's the most terrifying experience you've encountered in the woods?" Totally off topic, but at first I somehow misread this as outdoors salesman and spent a solid minute wondering what an outdoors salesman even is and why they're trying to sell products in the woods, before realising that I am in fact an idiot. Anyway, one of the comments was about a user's camping experience years ago. It read, "When I was about 15 years old, me and some friends decided to go camping at a nearby lake. It was a 3 to 4 hour hike, and the nearest house was maybe 3 hours away. We brought some homemade wine and drank the whole night and ate poorly grilled hot dogs. Life was good. We all shared the tent, so it was crowded in the tent, but we all fell asleep at around 2 a.m. At 4, I wake up because I can feel someone running their hand down my forearm. Not that unlikely that someone brushes up against me since there wasn't any space to move around in the crowded tent, but this is the arm that is facing the tent, so someone touched me from outside of the tent. I sit up and get instantly horrified to see that all my friends are sound asleep in the tent with me. I put on my deepest voice and shout, 'Whoever the fuck you are, you need to leave,' and a manly low voice answers me, 'You should pack up your stuff and leave.' Not threatening or aggressive, just calmly and in a dead kind of way. By now, all my friends are awake and are just looking at me. No words, just pure horror in their eyes. I say, 'Okay, we will go, but you need to leave. Hurry up.' When we get out of the tent, this man, who is huge by the way, has taken the little rowboat that was laying at the bank and gotten into it and is just sitting in the middle of the lake and watching us pack up our stuff and trying to get away ASAP. We had to walk around the lake on our way back and he was just sitting there watching us. We never went back." Edit with some context. This was 17 years ago in a rural Scandinavian country. We have a free-to-roam law, so we're not trespassing. We knew our way around the small town we grew up. Everybody knows everybody. There have been no people missing and or found dead. Never. There hasn't been a murder in generations. We told our parents, who at first tried to calm us down, and they said that we were probably overreacting. But the way he caressed my arm before he told us to go was not normal. When we told them everything and what he said to us, we were told to never go back. After COVID, we all met up and the subject came up and we tried to do some digging. There are no houses or cabins anywhere near. The lake is way too small to fish in. When he was sitting dead centre in his little boat, there was maybe 60 feet of land on all sides. No one has ever seen this man before or after. Although thankfully nothing actually came of this interaction, I still found it really chilling. How calm the man was when he told them they should leave, and how he just sat watching them in that rowing boat. I went camping with friends a few times around that age and I loved it, but always low-key worried about something like this happening. Encountering a strange man in the woods, or worse, getting murdered and chopped up. What makes the situation more eerie is that it's not clear why the man was even there, or why he told them to leave at 4 in the morning. They weren't trespassing, they were asleep in their tents at this point, so it's not like they were making a nuisance of themselves in that moment, and the man didn't actually try to harm them in any way. I can only assume that the story would be much less creepy if told from the man's perspective, but even if it was his property and he wanted them to leave, there's better ways of going about it. Who approaches a bunch of teenagers and just starts caressing one of their arms? Maybe this guy was just trying to creep them out for some reason. Either way, I'd love to hear his side of the story. Another possibility is that the man actually potentially had nefarious intentions and had approached the tent trying to find out who was in it. Maybe he didn't even mean to touch Opie's arm and was instead looking for a zip to open the tent. Either Opie threw him off when he responded in an assertive manner, or he had no interest in attacking a group of people and just hoped it was one or two. Who knows? At least Opie and his friends lived to tell this creepy tale. As I said in the intro, the final post we'll cover in this video, from the Nuclear Revenge subreddit, is honestly one of the most messed up stories I've read on the site. Let's just jump straight into it. First, this is a throwaway account. I will not be replying to comments. Take this as you will. This is my story of revenge against my mother and First, our father passed away 4 years before all this started. Car crash. Maybe our lives would have been better if he hadn't died that day. Also, before I get into this, one thing you should know is, before this man came into our lives, our mother was amazing. She was loving, supportive, and put us above everything, but she would soon replace us with her new man and her new meth habit. When I was around 9 and my little sister 7, our mum started dating this man, let's call him POS. POS was tall and weighed about 250 pounds. He had oily brown hair and a face filled with sores. I didn't like him from the start. He made me uncomfortable, to say the least. A few months after they started dating, POS moved into our house. Everything was okay for the first few weeks, I guess. Then my mum started to act funny. Staying up all night, not cooking us lunch or supper, not cleaning, snapping at us for no reason, and started hitting us. Our lives had been turned upside down by this man so quickly. Then one night, he came into my bedroom, held me down and raped me. I was screaming and crying for my mum, begging her to come help me, to come save me please, and then I've seen her, standing in the door watching him rape me. My mum was just letting him do this to me. She was just watching, like she was looking at a TV or something. When he finished and climbed off of me, he walked up to my mum, kissed her and walked away with her. My mum just left me, crying and bleeding. She allowed it to happen. Not long after they walked out, I hear them having sex in the living room. It was my 10th birthday. Happy birthday to me. A couple of nights later, I hear my little sister crying. I get out of the bed to find my mum standing in her doorway. I run to the room to try to help her, and my mum sees me. She backhands me across the face, making me slam against the hallway wall. I can hear my sister crying and begging, with no one coming to help her. That was the day that I started hating my mother. The abuse went on for 3 years. I didn't know at the beginning, but soon found out POS had gotten my mum using meth. POS and meth were the only important things in her life. My sister and I were nothing more than his play toys. I soon started noticing them arguing more and more, about who got more hits. This one was stashing from the other one, and you smoked the last of it all by yourself. This is when I started planning my revenge. I noticed after about 3 days they would finally pass out and would sleep for almost 2, and their bag of meth would always be on the bedside table beside POS. I know most would ask, why didn't you call the police or child welfare? Because jail wasn't enough. He might have raped us, but she betrayed us. She turned her back on us, and I wanted revenge and wanted her to suffer like we had. So every chance I got, I would move the bag, just at first, make it look tampered with. Then I started taking it from the bag and placing some on my mum's table. These things alone cause a lot of fighting. They start getting physical. I would keep my sister and I out of sight when this went on, and they never lasted long. Well, I continued to do this over a couple of months, taking more and more, flushing it or dropping it down the sink, until the last day. The last day I took the whole bag. It was a good amount, they had just re-upped, like they would say. I flushed the whole bag, and locked my sister and I in my room and quietly prayed that they didn't realise it was me. I'm not sure how long after I did this that everything started, but we had watched like 3 Disney movies before they finally woke up, and then I heard him start yelling about his missing bag. The yelling got louder and more intense, then I heard the breaking of objects. It was starting to get bad now. I hear my mum go from angry to scared. I hear him hitting her begging him to stop, swearing she didn't touch it. He continues to hit and she continues to beg, begging him to stop hurting her, begging someone to come help her, begging like we begged her for so many nights. My sister started asking to leave. She was scared and crying. I opened my window, put my sister outside and followed. We ran to the neighbours and told them that POS was beating our mum. The neighbour called the police and brought us inside, and we watched as the police pulled up to our house, start to walk up to the door, stop for a second, and then start yelling police and kick the door open. After what felt like forever, we see POS being brought out to the police car. I wait to see my mum follow, but she doesn't. I see an ambulance pull up and the paramedics run in the gurney. A short time later, I see them rushing back with my mum. I catch a glimpse of her once beautiful face, now looking like ground meat. Her face was solid red, covered in blood. She ended up dying on the way to the hospital. I never planned to have my mother killed. I just wanted her to feel the pain we had been feeling for these last years, and I guess in the end she did. She felt the pain and terror we felt every night for the last 3 years. She just felt it all in one night. Do I feel bad about what I did? No, I don't. If I didn't do what I did, we would have been stuck there, being raped and beaten every day until one of us would have died. POS was convicted of second-degree murder, possession of drug paraphernalia, I flushed the actual drugs, CP, pictures of us, and 23 counts of aggravated and 17 counts of aggravated against a person under 12 years of age. The last one is a death sentence where this all happened. We moved a few states over to be with our dad's parents. We hadn't seen them in almost 4 years, and for the first time in a long time we actually felt safe. My sister, still to this day, doesn't know what I did, doesn't know that I played a big part in our mum's death, and since we never talk about either of them, it never comes up. We are both happily married now. I have 3 children, she has 2. Both of us are active members of our PTA. No one looking at us today would ever guess the hell we went through, or what I did to get us out of it. I don't even know where to begin with commenting on this, it's just awful. There are a lot of terrible parents in this world, but Opie's mum once was a really good parent until drugs and her boyfriend, who was likely always a horrible person, turned her into a monster, and I find that so depressing. The death of Opie's father must have been hard enough for her and her sister to deal with at such a young age, and they ended up losing their mum in a much worse way. As Opie said, if her dad never died, there seems to be a good chance that none of this would have ever happened, and I bet the thought of how different things could have turned out haunts her to this day. Opie stated she never intended to cause her mother's death. How could she have even foreseen that happening? Regardless, I don't even think she really was the cause. The mum and her boyfriend argued about the drugs anyway, and it was clearly an incredibly toxic relationship. He was clearly an incredibly violent person, so it was probably only a matter of time until they had an argument that ended in her mum's death anyway. If anything, OP only sped up the process. It's infuriating that POS got the death penalty. Sure, he doesn't deserve to live, but I feel like death is too good for him. He got off lightly. As for the mum, there are a few comments on the post saying that she was more at fault than him, and while I agree in the sense that she could have stopped him and he couldn't have done it if she didn't allow him around her kids in the first place, I honestly think they're as bad as each other. He committed perhaps the worst crime that exists, and she stood in that doorway watching him do it to her own daughters. They are both the epitome of evil. It's hard to even comprehend that someone who was once described as an amazing mother could turn into the complete opposite. It's like she was literally replaced by a totally different person. All I can say is I'm glad to hear Opie and her sister are happily married now. I know there's nothing that can undo what they went through all those years ago, and they'll probably never really get over it, but the trauma they experienced could have resulted in their lives taking a much darker turn. I'd be interested to hear your thoughts in the comments, plus any other disturbing Reddit posts you'd like me to cover in a future episode. If you enjoyed the video, please consider liking and subscribing. Huge thank you to my Ko-fi members and channel members whose names are on screen now. I really appreciate your support. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next Thursday in a new video.